Alright, for today's industry insight, I got a very interesting one I want to talk about. And that once again goes back to the nature of making video games or making successful video games in today's market. Over this week, I had a chance to spotlight two games that were technically there, but in terms of their design, really didn't leave me with anything. And that was Tower 57 and The Mummy Demastered. Now, of course, you saw the whole play of Tower 57 if you've been watching the two videos this week. And, of course, my review of The Mummy Demastered went up yesterday with a spotlight probably going up in a few hours from the time this video gets posted. And, like I said, from a technical standpoint, they both worked. From beginning to end, I didn't have a problem with them. But in terms of their actual gameplay, it was like more akin to like eating rice cakes, I guess, that I'm eating food, but there's no experience there. And it got me thinking again about the bar of what it means to make a quality and hopefully profitable game in today's game space, or marketplace, I should say. And I'm starting to think more and more that it has become a lot harder to make a successful game, and even more so than when we last spoke. If you remember an earlier industry insight, we talked about how just making a good game is not enough. You have to do marketing, you have to do the PR, you need to engage your consumers, and so on. But I think in today's space, it's gotten even more than that. Just being able to get a game out there, even though there may not be anything wrong with it or that it will technically work, doesn't mean that it's going to leave a lasting impression. And what that also means is that it kind of feeds back into this discussion we've had of of this basically success or fail, like how polarized things are. We either hear about games that are these big successes, game of the years, 9 out of 10s, or they are just completely horrible, 5 and below on review scores, and they basically get mocked or they're bought maybe for the, so bad it's good kind of feel. But what about the games that are just there? Your average games, 7 out of 10, stuff like that. Is there a place for those in the market? And more importantly, can a game succeed if it's not a one-of-a-kind or super amazing blockbuster? And I know what some of you may be thinking right now. If the game comes out and it's okay, surely that should be enough. But I have a little bit of an analogy that I think kind of will help my discussion here. Last week I went to try a new burger place around here, and we usually get like a new restaurant like every few weeks. And after it was all over, I turned to my family and said, it's okay. Like, I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. And again, you're probably thinking, well, it got like a C, so that means it's good, right? Except here's the problem. I can think of 5 or 6 other restaurants in my area that have similar qualities. I just think they're okay. So why should I go to this restaurant as opposed to any of the other ones? There just isn't a reason. And when you're trying to build a successful product, you don't want people finding it on a whim or just deciding, close their eyes and pick and go, oh, that's where we'll go to. You want people going to your product because they know it's a great thing, they know it's highly reputable, and they want to support you. And that takes me back to this topic of average games. Is that with so many games being released these days, be it console, PC, mobile, and even with VR, it's becoming harder and harder for your game to stand out. As we said before on our last talk about this, the days of shovelware being able to just allow you to subsist are gone. You can't just release another Pac-Man clone or Mario clone and expect it to pay the bills. Not when you have developers all trying to push the envelope and go with very unique games. I mean, every year we say this, but we keep seeing things get pushed further and further up thanks to the creativity of the independent space. And of course, we can talk about the iterations on the AAA. But the point is, why should I buy your game that is like every other platformer or every other first-person shooter out there when for a reasonable or similar amount of money, I can get something that is 100% unique or something that is just a great take on something else? So my question for you, and this will probably be a quicker industry insight for today, is can an average game survive in this market? Something that is just okay. There's nothing horribly bad about it, but there's nothing that makes me want to run out and, scream from the rooftops, oh my god, I love this game. And this actually leads into probably a second topic, which we can start to talk about today. Again, about how the industry is very much hit driven. And that also has to do with review scores. As all of us know, when it comes to review scores of video games, it basically goes 10 or technically 9 to 7, and then nothing else matters. If your game gets a 6, it might as well have gotten a 1, or vice versa, because most people aren't going to look at it. And it's created this very much this hit focus mentality among publishers and reviewers to try and get those big names out there. So when a game doesn't exactly hit that mark, it gets like a 6 or a 7, but again, it raises that very tricky question. What is the difference in these scores? What's the difference between a game that is great, good, okay, acceptable, passing, stuff like that, and likewise, 6 and below, what is honestly the difference? Now, you can say that, it just means that the game is worse and worse, but how do you rate that? If you hate a game enough to give it a 5, how does a game make you hate it more to give it a 3 or a 2? Or conversely, if you don't like a game but you give it enough to a 4, a 5, and a 6, and so on. And we can certainly break off or segue into a greater talk on game scores, but that will be its own topic. I'm sure we'll be coming back to that again and again. But to bring this back and probably start wrapping up today's industry insight, the bar, as we've said, has been raised in all areas of the game industry. And when we last talked about it, like I said, I brought things up from a shovelware point of view. The games that were intentionally designed to be very cheap, a few months of development here and there, put it out for like $2, $3 and call it a day. And that has certainly been downgraded. But now we're starting to see cases where it's harder for even just a game that comes out that's okay to make a mark on the market or make a mark in digital stores. Like right now, I'm just going to flip over to Steam for a second while I'm talking, and once again, I see for new and trending games, there's a good 10 to 15 games being released today. Apparently Injustice 2 is out on the PC now as well. And that is the point. If your game is just okay, why should I give it the time of day when I have all these other great titles to look at? Or even if they're not as technically competent, they're doing something different. And for those of you who are longtime fans of Game Wisdom and the YouTube channel, you know that I have certainly given a few spotlights to games that really don't do it like everybody else. I mean, one of my favorite games of 2016, I think it was 2016 or 2015, I forget the years again, was Renowned Explorers International Society. And again, that's the point. That is a game that is certainly different from anything else on the market today. So if I have the choice between buying, let's say, a game for $5 that has a 7 or 6 on Metacritic, or 60 or 70%, or I spend $8.99 and I get a game that's 80 or 90%, which one should we do? While we can certainly deviate and talk about the issues of game evaluation, of course the race to the bottom, games are still being all compared to each other. And again, if I have 5 different video games all priced at $7.99 or $5.99 or whatever, why should I pick your game when there are other titles out there? And then once we start throwing in AAA games on sale, that brings a completely different layer to this conversation that makes things even more confusing. But for those of you watching this, and especially for any indie developers, when you're thinking about designing games these days, are you thinking about doing things along the safer traditional path, or do you feel yourself being pressured to go all out? Because as we've talked about before, sustaining yourself as an independent company is a really tough task today, because you're only as good as your previous hit, and we've certainly talked about that allure of going big. My first game was as reasonable success, so now I'm going to build something even bigger and grander. I'm going to spend the next 4 to 6 years of my life working on it, and hopefully it will make that money back. And if it doesn't, then that studio is usually going to go under. And that's the other big point. Creativity and these unique games aren't made quickly. Anyone who has worked on a game that there aren't any benchmarks or other games to compare it to knows that it takes time to iterate and polish these ideas when you have no foundation to start with. And games like Renowned Explorers or Portal, or again, my mind is like basically shutting down because I'm trying to think of all the crazy games I played over the years. But these games don't just pop up after 6 months of development. It takes a lot of time to do it. But again, the more time you spend on a game, the harder it becomes to recoup those costs. And that once again takes us back to this hit-driven aspect of the game industry. Do I work on something safe that may not cost a lot in development, but may not earn anything back? Or do I bet my house and double down on this crazy, untested idea that is going to cost a lot more, but could elevate my studio or my own credits to something higher and kind of secure my place for the years to come? But with that said, there's a lot more we can talk about and plenty of segues that could probably balloon this video out another 15-20 minutes, but let's wrap things up here. So thank you so much for watching today's Industry Insight. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And if you'd like to pitch a future vlog topic, please let me know in the comments. But otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all later tonight for our regular game streams. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. If you'd like to suggest games for me to cover or topics to talk about, let me know in the comments below. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on design, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the Game Wisdom Patreon, you can find us on there on patreon.com/gwbicer. $1 will get you into our private Discord channel where we talk game topics and more. $5 will get you voting privileges for any major event, including the Saturday Night Grab Bag, Patreon-funded goals, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy more videos here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.